As a game developer, playtesting is one of the most important weapons in your arsenal. You can spend months building features you think are fun, but the second real players get their hands on your game, they'll immediately find problems you never even considered. And if your goal is to actually release a good game, playtesting is not optional. So when I ran the very first public playtest for my horror cooking sim, I expected a few bugs here and there, but what I didn't expect was total chaos. Players were walking through walls, plates were launching themselves in the air and doing backflips, and for some reason everyone kept filling the entire kitchen with lettuce. I mean, it was kind of funny, I can't lie. So today I want to walk you through everything that happened during this disaster of a playtest, the biggest problems players uncovered, and all the fixes and improvements that came out of it. For some context, I've been working on my first Steam game, Feed Him, for almost 6 months now. It's a retro-inspired first-person horror cooking game where you prepare meals for a terrifying creature living beneath the ground. Keep him fed, keep him happy, because if you don't, you might end up becoming dinner yourself. Despite working on this game for months, I hadn't run even a single proper playtest yet, and that turned out to be a big mistake. Almost 100 people jumped into play, and every bug report, confusing mechanic, and weird exploit got dumped into one big ass list. And I'm not gonna lie, seeing that was pretty scary. But once I had all the feedback in one place, there was only one thing left to do: start fixing everything. The first thing that immediately stood out was the plates. They're completely optional, but serving food on a plate will give you a much higher score and make the monster happier. Apparently he enjoys ceramic shards with his meals. I mean, low-key extra protein or something, I don't know. One bug though was absolutely ridiculous. Somehow players figured out they could stick hot dogs to the underside of plates, causing the entire thing to spin completely out of control. And while it was funny, it definitely is not ideal. So the issue ended up being the colliders fighting with each other when you put the meal on the plate. So I changed how food and plates interact physically, making sure to exclude meal collider tags within the plate's physics, and now everything stays nice and stable. Well, mostly, because we're not done here with all the weird behaviors with the plates. Players also kept breaking the plates almost immediately after picking them up because they spawned stacked together. Not only that, but plates generally were just way too fragile. So I gave a little bit more durability to the plates and gave them a new dish rack instead. So now when the plates spawn, they're completely immortal to damage and manipulation until you pick them up. So for now, plates are fixed and they're feeling pretty good. And the key word is for now, because I know you guys are going to find a new way to make them flip over. Surprisingly, almost everyone agreed on one thing in this game. The knife was their favorite mechanic, and honestly, I don't blame them. Slicing ingredients is always really satisfying. That also meant every little issue with it became much more apparent. Sometimes the knife would randomly bounce off ingredients, not even cutting them, making the knife feel super dull and weak. I made slicing force a lot more powerful, which did result in a completely new bug where every ingredient would fly at the speed of light, but I fixed that too. Then I went a step further. Now, whenever you throw the knife into a surface, it'll actually get stuck into it. And I don't want to admit how long this feature took to get working properly, but it was super worth it, because now I can spend hours of gameplay literally just throwing a knife at walls and tables and watching them stick inside. You can even draw stuff. Check out this little smiley face I made though. I'll call him Roger, and Roger's pretty chill. I also added a bunch of smaller improvements that make a big difference without being immediately noticeable. So for example, sliced ingredients will now have a randomized velocity in the air so that instead of freezing exactly where they're cut, they have a little bit more emotion and fun to them. A tiny detail like this just makes slicing way more satisfying. One of the biggest pieces of feedback I got had nothing to do with the bugs themselves. People just did not know what they were supposed to do in this game, which honestly makes complete sense because I never actually made a full tutorial. I didn't want to waste a lot of time making a tutorial when I just wanted people to try the mechanics out, so my solution was to record this walkthrough video explaining everything and having me go through the game. And it turns out nobody actually watches videos like this. Everyone just clicks play and hopes for the best. And this was a little short-sighted on my end, and it probably doesn't help that the link to the tutorial in the game never actually worked in the first place. What was I even thinking when I was making this game, bro? So instead of spending weeks building a full tutorial system, I built something a lot simpler, something that actually fits the game's style and sauce a little better. Well, sauce literally, because I made a cookbook. Get it, guys? Because it's a cooking game? Yeah, Gordon Ramsay. At any point during the game, players can open it up to see every recipe, ingredient combination, and cooking mechanic with detailed descriptions. It's not really a replacement for a tutorial, but it gives players somewhere quickly to check things without interrupting the pacing of the game. And based on the feedback, I think this is something that's really going to help a lot. And one suggestion I saw over and over again was that the early game felt way too slow. Originally, day one teaches a player how to make hot dogs, which is just a hot dog and a bun. The idea was to slowly introduce mechanics to the player, but instead they kind of got bored. This is now even worse since the days in the game I made a minute longer based on player feedback of them being too short. So in order to combat this day being even more boring, now hot dogs can be topped with ketchup and mustard. absurd. I have no idea why I didn't just include these from the beginning, but they're here now, so better late than never. Adding these also has a new organic way to introduce the pouring mechanic in the game, which originally was introduced much later for salad dressing on day 4. Not just that, but it makes the early game a little bit more fun without going a little too bonkers. I also finally brought steak back into the game. If you watch my previous videos, you'll know that it technically existed before, but it was just so buggy that I couldn't let anyone use it this playtest. Buggy no longer, now you can slice it up and throw it into salads, so now the monster can hit his protein goals. Outside of the major features, I spent most of my time polishing hundreds of little things that made the game feel much smoother overall. A lot of players found that the camera sway was uncomfortable, so I added an option to disable it completely. I also added way more interaction prompts. Things like pouring liquids, rotating objects, or closing notes are now written on the UI, and I just completely overlooked this when I first worked on the game. I even added a subtle low-pass audio effect whenever you pause the game. A lot of these tiny details just make the game feel a lot more polished. But here's something that might sound a little strange, and just hear me out on this. I didn't fix everything on purpose. Some bugs weren't actually hurting the experience in my opinion, they were just funny. Players discovered things like crop surfing on objects and spawning endless mountains of lettuce. Again, I don't know why I didn't expect this to happen, but I literally have unlimited spawners for all the ingredients in the game. And yes, they're bugs, exploits, whatever you want to call them, but they're also harmless. They create funny moments, and they give speedrunners and freaky players something new to experiment with. Sometimes fixing every bug can make the game less fun, so for now, the lettuce stays. On top of this, I had a bunch of suggestions that unfortunately I didn't have time to put in now, but I'm definitely going to look at adding in future playtests to add a lot more depth to the game. Specifically, a lot of people said the monster wasn't super scary or as interactive as they would have hoped, especially because the game is literally called Feed Him, so you'd think that the monster would have more presence. I plan on adding maybe some new way that the monster can end up killing you and get closer and closer to killing you depending on how well you do during the game. I also got a lot of feedback that there wasn't a lot of incentive to cook meals properly or the right way. Now this is partially because you make money in this playtest, but a lot of the mechanics in the game that use money is gated off. So this is partially because of this specific scenario, but I do think also having the monster pose more of a threat will add a secondary objective to making sure you cook meals properly. I can't lie, even though it was low-key humiliating to get roasted by my community like this, the playtest probably saved my game in the long run. There were dozens of issues I never would have discovered on my own, because after staring at the same game project for 6 months, you become blind to your own design choices. I've just been testing the game in the same way for weeks. Watching almost 100 people play this exposed problems I didn't even know existed, and that's exactly what I was hoping for when creating this early build of the game. The best part of all this feedback I got is that everything you've seen in this video is already being rolled out as a surprise update into the current playtest build. So if you want to experience the updated version for yourself, join my Discord and hop into this playtest to find a new 1,000 different ways to break my game. And please, enough with the lettuce, I'm begging you guys. And if you'd rather wait for launch, make sure to wishlist Feed Him on Steam so you don't miss out on the full demo and release later this year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next devlog.